Hello, everybody. Welcome to UGASports Live. My name is Radi Nabulsi. I'm joined by Dayne Young and Jed May. Coach Don is not feeling up to the show today. He's been very busy lately, so we're going to let him have the day off. And we're going to pepper Jed May, who went to SEC Media Days. He and Anthony Dasher were our two UGASports guys out there. Of course, Randy Powers helped us with some social media stuff, so give him a follow on TikTok if you would. But Jed, I want to kind of touch base with you because we haven't had a show in a long time. I was out of the country it just happened that I missed the 2 Tuesdays in a row. I wasn't gone for 2 weeks, but I was out a long time. And then last week I was sick. So it's been a while since we've had a show. And I guess the biggest thing that's happened, of course, there was a ton of commits that happens every time we leave. We'll talk about those tonight at 8:30. But we had SEC Media Days. Practice starts August 1st. I'm no genius, but that's just a little over a week away. So kind of give us the storylines that came out of SEC Media Days for anybody who was under a rock and wasn't really paying attention.
Yeah, well, this is, I was talking about it with Dash there. This is like Kirby Smart's annual slogan of the year unveiling. So this year he talked about assume nothing, which comes from Nike. Apparently they studied Nike this offseason, which I think they've studied Nike before, if I'm not mistaken. But this is the year. This year they took assume nothing from it. And you've got a bunch, when I heard that, I thought of a bunch of guys who are coming back, whether that's Carson Beck, obviously back at quarterback. You've got defensive linemen who have been here for, since the Rick administration, it feels like, with Stackhouse and Brinson and some of those guys. You've got Malachi Starks, who has kind of just took the world by storm 2 years ago and has been great ever since. There's a lot of different ways you can spin it, I guess, to apply to the current roster. And, there's bits and pieces of news. David Daniel Sissavan is no longer on the team. There was, of course, Kirby Smart addressed the driving arrests from, I think that was about a week before Media Days. Branson Robinson's getting back closer to healthy. So there's little nuggets of news mixed in with the whole, again, the assume nothing mantra, which I'm sure we'll hear about next Wednesday or Thursday or whatever it is that first day of practice and the first press conference too.
Dane, I think you actually have some clips from those.
Let's say you're producing for me, Jed. We didn't discuss this before you got on. Here's Kirby Smart talking about it.
And we took a week by week look in skull sessions, breakout sessions, as well as together, and studied kind of their model. And one of the first things we studied was the belief of assume nothing. And I think that's so important in football.
The other thing that strikes me after a couple of years of finding these slogans that Kirby Smart likes to do, when were his formative years as a young athlete? It was Michael Jordan. And so to me, the interest in Nike probably comes from a lot of that, is how did Michael Jordan become what he did? Nike was a big piece of that with the marketing, but also how do you maintain success that way? That's where the All Blacks came from, was how do you keep winning year after year after year after year? Well, Under Armour had a spike, and then you don't see Under Armour anymore. Even Auburn, which has been an Under Armour company, is now going to Nike. This has happened over the last years. Nike remains on top with a lot of competitors, and I think that's what George is trying to do.
Nice. You're definitely right when you're looking at how do you keep that. It's the same thing Nick Saban faced. These guys know they're the best of the best, and that they've got a target on them, but that's not enough to motivate them. How do you get them up for all those games? And this year, even tougher than last year, because you got to be up for Ole Miss at Ole Miss, up for Texas at Texas, up for Alabama at Alabama. Clemson to start the season right off the bat. Remember, heck, I predicted Georgia would lose that game to Clemson and then not lose again that season that they went on to win the whole thing. Because we thought, they're just not quite there yet to start the season, but they will be. Again, we were looking at that game like this is going to be a tough one. Heck, Georgia was favored to lose it. There were a lot of people picking Clemson to win that game, that season opener a few years ago. But now most Georgia fans just assume, the Clemson's a win. Kirby kind of addressed that. He goes, hey, you guys are talking about how tough our schedule is. You forgot Clemson's on there to start the season. So how do you keep your guys up for that? How do you come up with a mantra? Eat off the floor thing didn't kind of work. I did like the message they got from the All Blacks, but you have to have that kind of buy-in. And you hear Kirby when he first started his career talking about size and strength. We got to get bigger in the trenches. We got to do better recruiting. Now he's got those guys. Now he's evolved. Year 9, last 6, 7, 8, 9 of his tenure, he's more like a psychiatrist, a psychologist. He is more into headspaces and working on the intangibles. You can measure the heights and weights of these guys, but you've got to work on motivations. And it's a great problem to have, but it is a problem. When you're, say, Mac Brown at UNC, you're just trying to get lengthy guys. Perfect example, Jed, you were there. You heard Lane Kiffin talking about we got to get guys with length. There's a big story after he played Georgia. He's like, they were coming into Athens. They were supposed to be really good. Georgia kicked their teeth in. And after the game, he's like, we got to get bigger. We got to get longer. We got to get faster. And he spent the entire offseason doing that. Kirby does that, by rote. He gets those top players. But now he's in headspaces and doing skull sessions and trying to find out these guys why. It's different covering Georgia than a team that's trying to build. Now they're trying to maintain. And I think that assume nothing, to your point, Jed, is, too many people. We have a ton of assumptions. We'll get questions at the half end of the show. And a lot of those questions are based on absolute assumptions that could be wrong. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Lane Kiffin specifically. They're kind of in that, everybody talks about Penn State in the Big Ten. Like, yeah, you're a really good program. You're competitive year after year, but they haven't been able to beat Ohio State and Michigan. And Ole Miss is kind of in that same boat. They haven't been able, not that they play Georgia every year, but they haven't been able to beat Georgia. They haven't gotten over the Alabama hump either. So you're putting together these 9-3, 10-2 seasons, but at the end of the day, you're not where you want to be. So how do you get there? Josh Heupel at Tennessee talked about a little bit of the same thing. They have come really far from where they were when he took over in 2020 or 2021 with NCAA investigations and whatever. And that's great. And he's done a great job. But now you've got to get that last yard, which is beating Georgia, which is beating I'm assuming Alabama is one of their permanent opponents. So you got to beat Alabama. So, which in fairness, they have beaten Alabama, but you've got to put it all together in a year, I guess. So yeah, it's two very different mindsets from, even Steve Sarkisian at a point. They got to the big dance last year. Now you got to get over the edge. So Sarkisian, Kiffin, who are Heupel, these coaches in the SEC who have gotten really close. Now you've got to figure out a way to get over the top. Brent Venables has done a good job getting Oklahoma back to relevance last year. That's great. Now you've got to get over that next step with obviously I guess it's fair to say probably a tougher schedule than you would face week in, week out in the Big 12.
Well, and if you listen to Kirby Smart and really all the Georgia guys, because they kind of echo his talking points as being prepped for the media days, you kind of hear what that assume nothing actually sounds like when they're in the facility. Because I don't think Kirby Smart turned around, all right, guys, assume nothing. What he's saying is when they say Auburn is the toughest place to play in the SEC, and then you see all the national writers be like, whatever the stat was, Auburn is 8-9 in the last 17 games. I forget what the stat. But you saw national writers be surprised that Georgia players and coaches were talking about how tough it is to play at Auburn. Georgia really struggled in that game last season.
They did.
And Georgia, Jordan-Hare Stadium, I think, is one of the top 2 or 3 places that are most toughest. It's the toughest play in the SEC. But as much as fans are talking about everything that what assume nothing could mean, Georgia assumed that it was going to beat South Carolina last year and found fourth quarter at a ball game. Auburn last year was probably a better team for the majority of that game than Georgia. Georgia found a way to win both of those, which is what championship caliber teams do. But that's where the assumption comes in. And that's going to happen somewhere on this 2024 schedule. I don't know if it's going to be Ole Miss or if it's going to be Tennessee, or maybe it's even teams lower than that. Missouri snuck up on a lot of people last season. Can they do that again? I don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned the last 1%, the last yard. It's the hardest to get. It separates the champions from the non-champions. Sometimes it's just luck. You get, Heupel, you mentioned Drinkwitz, and he had a great season last year. Missouri, a much, I don't want to say easier schedule than Georgia this year, but he has a pretty good bloody schedule for what they're going into with better players. So you got Drinkwitz, you have those guys they're trying to, in other words, you can get them pretty good, and you get that buy-in. Kirby got that in year 2. Year 1 was not a great year for him. Year 2, they played for a national title. All the mantras, all the philosophy, those players at that point believed it because they're like, wow, we're here playing for a title. So you get that buy-in. problem is those guys graduate. They go off to the NFL. Now you got a new batch coming in, and the older guys are telling them, hey, do this. This is the way it's always been. And they know it hasn't been that way. So you can't rely on the older guys teaching it to the younger guys or getting it to stick with them. Because the younger guys are like, well, of course you believe what coach is saying because you're a starter. You're going to mimic the coach. You're a teacher's pet, basically. It's tough to get buy-in from 85 guys. And to that end, we've seen Kirby bang his head on these players getting arrested. That was another topic that came up at SEC Media Days and something that's still going around out there because the numbers are what they are, and they're not ridiculous charges, but there are a lot of misdemeanors these guys are getting hit for, but it's the repetition over and over and over again. And Kirby's trying to get these guys to buy in, but off the field, he said he stays up at night, not based on what the players are doing out on the field. It's the stuff that keeps him up at night is what's going off the field when they can't be around him. And that's the stuff that was making headlines right before he went. Jed, what was his answer there when people are saying, hey, Kirby, what the hell is going on in Athens? You've had deaths. Why are these guys still speeding?
Well, let me sneak in here. I do have a clip of Kirby talking about some of the measures they've taken, but then I want Jed to kind of respond to questions that inevitably came after this. Here's Kirby.
And I'm very disappointed in the outcomes, but I am very pleased with our process we've put in terms of education, driver safety, requiring defensive driving, education, talking about it, having leaders stand up and talk about it, bringing speakers in and talk about it, suspending players, dismissing players, which we've done. I don't know to this point any coach in college football that suspended a player for a driving citation. We have. And we've also dismissed players based on driving citations. Nobody's done that.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was going to say, Dayne. He talked about all the measures they've taken. Their Radi reported, their speakers brought in. There's a million different ways to do this. But me personally, at a point, I think because people even threaten, okay, you can threaten a guy with being kicked off the team, you can threaten him with being suspended. But in the case of Smile Mondon specifically, he was there the night of the fatal crash or whatever. I don't remember exactly what his role was, and I don't want to say I do, but he was there at some point. So if seeing a friend of yours and obviously Chandler LaCroix too, and Tory Bowles and Jalen Carter, if seeing friends of yours die and be seriously injured isn't enough to stick it in your head, then what is being kicked off the team, So I think, like Kirby said, they trust their process. They trust the education they're giving these guys. And at a certain point, it's you've done all you can do. You can't, monitor these. You can't pay for babysitters for these guys 24/7. You can keep them in the facility as much as you can. And there's certainly, these guys could live at the facility if they wanted or needed to, but they're not going to be there all the time. And at a certain point, you've just got to educate them as best you can and just trust that they'll make the right decision. And I don't know, everybody says this is all on Kirby, but I don't know what else he can.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I did that came up. We got a question. Is he more like Urban Meyer or more like Nick Saban? I'm like, he's like Nick Saban. This is a stupid question. But again, I believe that, not to get political, but when people complain about gun laws, I'm like, the gun's not doing it. It's the person behind the gun. You blame the person responsible. Kirby needs to do X. Kirby's done every damn thing he can. And me and Kirby aren't buddies. I'm not here to defend him. I get frustrated with this stuff. Hell, we're the ones that break the news on this stuff all the time. I wasn't happy to report deaths. I wasn't happy to report come off vacation and go, by the way, more players have been arrested. There's no joy in that. Hell, I'm a University of Georgia graduate. I don't want to have to report those stories, but we do. But that's my point about Kirby having to be a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a headspace engineer to work with these guys, off the field, but then on the field, get them to buy in, stop doing stupid stuff. And, when I wrote a piece for Rivals recently, I said, look, being young, rich, and stupid is undefeated. 18, 19, 20 years old with all these 4- and 5-star guys. What do they do? Kirby's done a great job with NIL. Georgia's been behind other schools, but they've done a pretty good job with the fan base stepping up, people that want Malachi Starks and Carson Beck and Michael Williams, and Brett Thorson to represent their companies. These kids are making money now. What do you do at 18, 19, 20 years old? You buy a car. What do you get? A really nice one. Carson Beck said himself, yeah, I got a Lambo. It goes fast, but I don't drive like an idiot. Some guys are going to, and that's not something, being young and stupid is, I'm guilty of it. Let's not talk about what I did when I was 19. There weren't any cameras around, thank God. But that's my point about Kirby, this assume nothing mantra. It's like, don't assume that a wreck is going to make your players stop doing stupid stuff. Don't assume that we've got our nickelback figured out. Don't assume that Trevor Etienne is your starting running back. Don't assume that Carson Beck's going to win the Heisman. You can't assume any of that stuff. And I think the idea here is to shake down the base level, the base expectations to zero and say, look, you guys didn't beat Alabama last year. You won 2 titles. You lost it last year. We got to reset from zero. Don't assume that his 4 new coaches are going to fit right in and everything's going to work great. Don't assume that we talk about all the weapons that Carson Beck has. Don't assume they're all going to be healthy. We broke the news yesterday on the defensive line. Jordan Hall is going to be out for a while. He had something done with his lower leg. I think of the bone in his leg. He's questionable. It'll be close if he's ready for the first game. Jordan Hall is supposed to be an integral part of the Georgia defense. So you can't assume that, the defensive line will be better this year. Really? So I'm with you, Jed. You just can't guarantee anything like that. So
on the driving stuff, though, I'm going to be both. I'm going to praise Kirby Smart and be critical. The praise here is that I thought he was much more open with the conversation of like, yeah, this is a problem that we recognize. Here are some of the solutions that we've put in place, because a lot of the past statements have been internal discipline and just don't look at this. We're handling it. Don't look at it. Don't talk about it. Yeah. That doesn't work when you keep having the issue. And so the fact that he kind of brings up the process of what Georgia's doing to try to rectify it, cool. I think that earns you a lot of PR, a lot of respect. That's what leaders do. Also, though, the problem still happens and it's still persisting, and it's some of the older guys. And maybe you're right, Roddy. Maybe this is just gonna happen. And
it did. I mean, we went through the same thing with Mark Richt. There was a whole narrative, Mark Richt's losing control. Stuff happened under Coach Donnan, and what a disciplinary Coach Donnan is. He holds us to account. I'm scared to step one wrong foot in front of him, because he's got eagle eyes. He catches you. And he knows what was going on. Again, they act like it doesn't happen at Clemson, South Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, UMass, Tupelo. It happens everywhere. Hell, my son got a super speeder ticket, and I warned him specifically. I'm like, hey, when you go through arcade, it's a speed trap. Kid got busted.
And maybe that's the case, and it's just going to be that way. And this is all that Georgia
is going to continue,
other than have a threshold that if you get to that threshold, then you're just off the team. And we know Kirby Smart doesn't like doing that, because that doesn't help the person that is making it.
Here's the thing is, it doesn't hurt the person. To Jed's point, Smile Munden already had something there. But who is the latest kid? A guy gets arrested for it's his first offense. Well, it's not fair to kick him off the team just because 13 other guys did something stupid.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you have multiple things in your history of, I worked in local TV one time, and I had enough speeding tickets that they were not sure that I was going to be insured to drive their TV station car. That was a work-related issue that we had to work through together. That was at my first job. This happened, so this is not unique to Georgia football.
Young and stupid,
in that sense. Right? And like, I don't think I was being unsafe. I just drove fast, and I didn't have vehicles to drive fast that way.
And Kirby does have a just like with the DUI thing and drugs in the student athlete handbook. 10% for the first charge, and then half a season, then you're off the team. It got progressively worse for the same person. Yep. What we see a lot of fans doing is saying, "Oh, it keeps happening." Well, it's not the same 3 guys. And then they go, "Well, it's widespread," which is more frustrating, which I get. But anyway, I'm going to move on from that.
Well, I wanted to ask Jed, because I know he's got to pop off here in just a second and may return. I'm not sure. But just in general, media days in Dallas for the first time, I'm a bit of a purist with this event, which I'm not a purist of much in sports, but I think should always be at that mall in Hoover, at the hotel mall in Hoover, where you can get bad Chinese food and then go to a sports bar after. How do you compare this to that, or maybe when it was in Atlanta?
It's definitely a different. It's not attached to a mall, so you can't shoot on over to the food court. It wasn't as cold as the one in Hoover is in the big room, so that's a plus. especially since I didn't bring a jacket because it's 400 degrees in Dallas. There was definitely, and this is probably just a first year thing, there were so many questions about Texas and Oklahoma. Just, you hear a lot more the I'm so-and-so from the Tulsa World or the Austin American Statesman. And that's popped up over the past couple of years too, just from the news that Texas and Oklahoma were joining the conference. But there's so much of, what do you think Texas means? There were some I think Kirby Smart even got asked this, like, do you think Texas can really win the league? And it's like, that's not a question that's going to be answered directly. Like every coach is going to be complimentary of Texas and whatever, but it's just a unique vibe as far as the media goes. In Dallas, yeah, it's fine. It was really hot. We had brisket one day, which was okay. Didn't get to explore a ton. I flew home early due to some family stuff, but yeah, it was fun. I'm looking forward to it being back in Atlanta next year. I think it's at the Hall of Fame. So
yeah. I assumed so many questions would be about Texas and Oklahoma. The novelty, yes, but Radi, you've told me plenty of times before that the biggest expense in running a media company is travel. And so when you ask all of these in the traditional SEC footprint, hey, now you have a July trip for 4 or 5 days to Dallas. That's a bigger demand that some companies just don't have the resources to make that happen. And so if you can drive to it, it makes a big difference rather than fly.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
But also a lot of guys go to that thing to see themselves on TV. That's why I've never been a fan of me going personally. We cover it as UGASports, but one of the perks of being the boss is saying, you guys go cover this. Because I don't want to see these idiots with a blog stand up and go, hey, Coach Saban, so-and-so from here'smyopinion.com. And just to be on TV, and there's some stupid. It feels like the wide open media days or media that they have in the Super Bowl each year for the national championship, where every influencer and blogger tries to show up just so they can get some FaceTime. And I'm like, look, I got guys like Jed, who's an old soul journalist who wants to answer some questions, and somebody's asking, Kirby Smart is
not to turn this into a media day bashing session, but I think most coaches do a good job. Like Kirby Smart has a private press conference more or less with local media before he goes out. And that's where you get good information. That's where you get the David Daniel Sisavan thing. He commented more directly on driving, or commented period on driving arrest, because he didn't do it in the big room. But then you get to the big room and it's questions about Texas and Oklahoma. And nowadays it's, NIL and conference realignment. And I remember last year Lane Kiffin went and he had a 20, 25-minute press conference, and I learned nothing about all this. I didn't learn a thing. And Georgia was going to play them. And I was like, Lane Kiffin is obviously one of the more gregarious coaches. Georgia played Ole Miss. It was exciting. And I sat there and I was like, okay, what do I know about Ole Miss now? Like, he got one question about Quinshon Judkins, who everybody knew was a stud. So yeah, it is what it is. I mean, I think, like I said, I think you get your best information from the small sessions. If it's a school you're covering is lucky enough to have one, and then every now and then you get a coach pop off and say something in the big room. But yeah, it's SEC in particular turns into it's gotten to be a little bit of a circus for sure.
Well, they did have the votes at the end, which is always interesting, because for some reason we keep asking the media what we think is going to happen, and the media is always wrong. But I hope the media is right for this one. They did pick the Bulldogs to finish first in the SEC, Texas second, Alabama third, and Ole Miss fourth. Luckily, Georgia gets to play all three of those. So need to play three of the top four. LSU is fifth, Missouri is sixth, which was a little surprising to me with that schedule they have. Tennessee seventh, Oklahoma eighth. So, and then it kind of ends with Mississippi, Vanderbilt, and Arkansas there towards the end. Jed, give me your thoughts on the fact, though, that Georgia had 15 players, 15 on the first, second, and third preseason all-SEC team list. Yeah,
it makes sense. You go down this roster and there's so many guys, and I wonder how much of Georgia gets is also at that point where you get the Alabama benefit of the doubt when you get down to the third. Because I couldn't put together a three-team first-team offensive line. I'm not that smart. So you get down to that level if you're filling one of these out, and you're like, I don't know. Who's Georgia's right guard? I'll put him on there. So I wonder if Georgia's starting to get – and obviously there's guys that – I'm not saying none of the Georgia guys even don't deserve it, but there's Carson Beck, there's Trevor Etienne, Trevor Etienne. Obviously, people in this conference know what he can do. But I mean, you got Oscar Delp as a third team member. Oscar Delp is a very good player. He's also a little bit unproven. So it's like, yeah, sure, Georgia's probably got a really good tight end. So, but
Georgia gets the benefit of the doubt from that because, like, it's not a given.
Dude, Alabama got that all the time. So.
It's not a given. Some of these guys are starters at Georgia.
Yeah, for sure. So, and Michael Williams is playing a little bit of a different position. Obviously, we all kind of think he'll excel there, but he's in a different spot. So it makes sense. I mean, again, all these guys are really good players, are all deserving of the honor. But it makes sense that the team picked to win the league is going to have, 15 players overall spread out over 3 teams. So I'm sure Brett Thorson is thrilled that he got on the second team, despite the fact that he's not going to punt very much this year in his eyes. So I'm sure he's thrilled that somebody recognized his body work. All right, guys, I got to run. I'll be back later.
Right. Yeah, we got to let Jed go. Jed has a radio spot there he has to do. The only issue I had was the Ernest Green being third team. I'm like, man, who else you got out there? Who's your first team guys?
Yeah, I think this is tough because LSU is so good on the offensive line. And I think that probably for like upcoming NFL draft list, LSU guys probably have that on lockdown a little bit.
And Tyler Booker, I can see that too. That's pretty good. Yeah. I can't really fault that. Emory Jones, the good. Caden Proctor.
I mean, I say that about LSU, but then I see Mason Taylor at tight end, productive, fine, but he's not better than Georgia tight ends. Oscar Delp is as proven as he is, in my opinion, but that's just me.
I don't understand the Dayne Everett. I don't call it disrespect. The dude started every game last year. I could definitely see him as a second teamer. I know a lot of Georgia fans thought he got burned a lot, but when you're opposite Kamari Lasser, come on. You're going to throw to Tyke Smith in the slot. You're not going to throw over there either. So I hope Dayne Everett gets his just desserts this year and we find some newfound respect for him.
The thing I always scroll down to look at, there's always one of the credentialed media at media days that picks a team that has no chance to win the conference. So I like to go look at those first place votes of who they say is going to be the champion. And of course, there was somebody that went, I'm sure they probably halfway worked for them, that picked South Carolina to win the SEC. Go look at South Carolina's schedule. I mean, I don't know. Like, there's no way. And look, if you said LSU is going to win the SEC, even maybe you said Tennessee, fine. Any of those top 8, maybe if everything in the world aligned for them, perhaps. But South Carolina, man, it's much more likely Shane Beamer's out of there after this year than they win the SEC.
If you might not make it through the end of the season.
Exactly. Their schedule is gnarly.
That's
Florida's schedule is gnarly. Both of those dudes have to impress early.
Yeah, they're picked to finish 12th and 13th, and I can see both. Well, Florida's schedule starts out okay, but then it ends awful.
Maybe that's a loser leaves town. I don't even know if they play anymore. See, there's a PR thing to this too, Roddy, that when you start seeing where they rank in the SEC, you could kind of hide if you overperformed, but maybe you were second or third in your division. Oh yeah, Ole Miss third in the SEC West, not that bad. But all of a sudden that becomes 8th in the SEC.
Yeah,
it's going to sound a little bit different to these fan bases.
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas is not going to put up, as much as they love Sam Pittman, they're not going to put up being 14th in the SEC if this plays out the way it does. And Kentucky, as long as they've been on an upward swing for a while there, you start finishing 11th. You're right. It's like, oh well, they were 3rd or 4th in the SEC, and they were leading in this game, and then they had a bad game, a bad turnover here. No, you're right. That's going to be even more pressure. So.
And I would say that Kentucky is probably undervalued there. If you were to rank these where I think they're going to end up, I think Kentucky's a couple spots higher than that. I like Vandergrift. They have a good offensive line. Typically, they win the games they're supposed to. They lose the games that they're supposed to. So if they can find a way to be 8-4, that's probably pretty good in the SEC.
Well, one thing that would be a good decision, and you should vote for next time your family's trying to decide what you want to have a meal, what you want to eat for dinner. Try the Your Pie Peach and Prosciutto Pizza. It is phenomenal. I first heard about it. I said, that's a terrible idea. I say terrible idea. I said, that is a weird idea. And Drew French was brought some to our show early on. We were actually still eating at Champions back in the day. He brought some to the show. We tried it on air. It was phenomenal. And every year they bring it back. Now, it is not a year-round event because the peaches aren't sweet year-round. He's not going to get some crazy hothouse peaches. He waits until they have really good, sweet peaches, and you get them on a fantastic pizza. Well, the peach and prosciutto is phenomenal. If you order online today, you get double points on the Your Pie app. And if you order over $10, you get free breadsticks. So get the Lineage Supreme, the Great White, the barbecue bacon ranch with chicken, or the peach and prosciutto. And you will be very happy that you did. And let their friends know at Your Pie that we sent you. Also, get a chance, swing by Athens Ford. The specials that they have right now are fantastic for July. Of course, they had the 4th of July deal, but right now it's $5,000 off the Bronco Sports models, $5,000 off the 2024 Ford Explorer. Again, I can't recommend the Explorer enough. I've driven the wheels off mine. Get a Ford Escape for $26,999 or 2.9% financing for 72 months. Or get the 2024 Ford Edge. I don't know if you've been in an Edge recently, but that is a fantastic, perfect. I love the size of that car. It's a really good one. $33,999 or 0.9% APR finance for 60 months for qualified buyers. Remember, all the vehicles, all the new ones at least, and the vast majority of the pre-owned vehicles from Athens Ford come with a lifetime powertrain warranty, which you can only get at Athens Ford. You don't get that at every Ford dealer. You got to go to Athens Ford to get that when you get the chance. All right. Jed's off doing radio, which he is in high demand these days. And if you get a chance, drop Jed your sympathies. He had a loss in the family, and it's been tough for him. But he is a die-hard worker guy. He keeps going at it. I know you had some other clips there. We got a lot of questions we need to get to, but are there any other clips you want to touch on from SEC Media Days?
I do. I have one from each of the players and then one more from Kirby Smart. Let's start with Kirby Smart talking about Malachi Starks, who I think most people would agree is on the trajectory to be the most talented player on this defense. Maybe Michael Williams, but we'll thought this was a really good point Kirby made and probably a response to how other teams recruit against Georgia.
He started for us since day one. So all the knocks and all the things said out there about you can't start as a freshman at Georgia, it's too hard to play on defense. The first game he ever was in against Oregon, he started, and he started ever since. He's a quiet, humble leader.
Always recruiting, man. Always recruiting.
Dude, so I do the recruiting show with Jed and, of course, Lance McCurley and Trent Smallwood. And for the longest time, we were talking about wide receivers because, it's tough for Georgia to sign a 5-star wide receiver. That seemed to dominate every show. Of course, there was a quarterback talk, with Rashada and then, Lewis and then Ryan Montgomery and Jared Curtis, and I went back and forth. But the one thing that always kind of rolled around was, where's Georgia at on defensive back? Where are the defensive backs? What are they doing with the defensive backs? And we're like, look, guys, it's really tough. After last year, when you signed a bumper crop of talented secondary guys, you landed the number one safety in the nation. You landed the number one cornerback in the nation. They're already doing reps, with the first teamers at Georgia's, voluntary summer practices. If you are a top cornerback, top athletes that they're going to move to the secondary, are you really gung-ho to come to Georgia? And it's that, we're discussing it because when we talk to players, like, wow, they really signed a lot of good guys last year. Very true. So Kirby's hearing that. Kirby's talking to this guy saying, hey, look, come to Georgia. And they're like, yeah, well, Alabama told me or Tennessee told me that you signed the number one cornerback in the nation last year and another guy who's really good. So he knows that is a negative recruiting tactic being used against him. So, of course, he addressed it by saying, look, if you're as good as we think you are, you could start the first game like Malachi Starks did and have a huge interception that, set him up. The mythos. Malachi Starks was born that day, and it hasn't lessened. So I think he nailed it. And, of course, he's just a good kid. I remember taking Coach Donna to see him, play at Jefferson High School. And meeting all the people over there that just raved about him. I mean, we were told about him in the 8th grade. They're like, this kid's going to be a superstar. And Kirby's just pointing it out. It's like, hey, I've got a national audience. Let me talk to those recruits out there. If you were a great offensive lineman, you're a great defensive tackle, come on, I'll play you.
Starks was asked who on Georgia's offense is not being talked about enough nationally.
I see his name every now and then, but I think Dylan Bell. I think Dylan Bell is that guy that people need to watch out for. He, the way he works, the way he goes about his business. I mean, it's just incredible. And just to be able to compete with a guy like that is huge. So I'm excited to see what he does this season.
To be able to compete with a guy like that is huge. I mean, that's the game knows game kind of thing right there.
That is the other sales pitch. Let me find this real quick. So we had a question came in from Carlton Mick. It says, what do we know about the new defensive back from Oregon? And I'd forgotten about that kid. His name's Colin Gill, transferred in kind of midsummer to be a Georgia. And it's not a guy I expect to play early on. He did not want a ton of NIL, but he wanted to come to be developed. What was the sales pitch there? Come to our practices. You can start in a game at Oregon or some other school, and you will play against some good talent. But if you come and you have to go up against our wide receivers, you will go up against a Ladd McConkey every day. You go up against a Kyrus Jackson. You go up against a Dylan Bell. You go up against the kid transferred in, Colby Young. You can guard them. You can guard anybody in the NFL because they're all going to the NFL. So come through our practices. So when you ask Malachi Starks, who's not being talked about, he's like Dylan Bell. You line him up a running back. We can't stop him. You line him up a wide receiver. He's tough. And that's what's made Malachi Starks better, was going up against Ladd McConkey and guys like that, having to watch them and read them and try to stop them. It is the fact that those practices are so tough against future NFL players. Amarius Mims just signed. Amarius Mims didn't have a ton of starts. People are like, why is he going in the first round? He doesn't have all that game tape. Well, they got practice tape on him going up against Jalen Carter. I mean, what else do you need? So,
well, when Michael Williams comes in as a stud recruit, and he's asked this at media days, what's your welcome to Georgia moment? Has to do with Broderick Jones on the other side.
Broderick Jones, man, I very rarely get pancaked, man. Broderick Jones pancaked me, and I was livid about it, man. I was highly upset.
They say the
that
practice
is a potential first rounder talking about being laid out by another first rounder.
Yeah. And so these young offensive linemen that Georgia has, second team, they're having that experience with Mike Hill being the one running circles around them, pushing them into the ground.
Oh yeah, we're hearing about how good David Calhoun is. I guarantee you, at some point, David Calhoun had to tangle with Michael Williams, and it probably didn't go well for David. But then David, when he's a upperclassman, he's going to pancake some 5-star freshman that comes in, and it's just that is what Kirby is telling to these guys. It's like, look, you may not start, but if you're really elite, like Malachi Starks was, you will start. We got faith in you. But if not, you're going to get your time. And he went on to talk about how Carson Beck did it the right way. Carson Beck, I thought they were finally getting the story that we reported years ago. It's finally coming out. Carson Beck is set to take over for JT Daniels the week before the UAB game. He goes out there and works with the first team, and he blows it. He blew it. Let's call it what he did not have a great series of practice. And then, he thought he was going to start, even though he knows he didn't do as well as he could have, was really excited. And then they called him and told him, I guess they told him Friday. We'd reported it much earlier, but they told him Friday, you're not going to start. It's going to be Stetson Bennett. And then, 2 years of Stetson Bennett. And Carson's like, look, I was devastated. I didn't want to talk to anybody. But Kirby Smart pointed out, look, he stuck it out. And he continued to develop. He could have taken his toys and gone home, jumped in the transfer portal, but he just got better. And I will say, in my years of covering Georgia, if you'd asked me 3 years ago about Carson Beck, I'm like, he's going to transfer out. He's not that good. And that's, again, it's not my opinion. I don't give opinions on players. I regurgitate what I've been told from people whose opinions I respect. And they're like, yeah, we kind of missed on Carson. But again, that was like the COVID year in there, and he's a freshman or just coming out of it. I was surprised that he was the number 2 guy there for a while, but where he is now, holy crap, Dayne, that is a complete 180.
Well, and he acknowledged, because that story I think is pretty well told. He acknowledged his improvement from game 1 last season to the end of the year.
I think over the course of last year, if you go look at game 1 and then you go look at game 14, it's not even the same quarterback. And then you're not making the decision to come back this year. I'm excited to see what the progression from game 15 to whatever X amount of games we might play this year is going to look like. Each game, more confidence gets built, and that repetition continues to happen. You just become more comfortable within your offense and with your teammates.
I mean, his play shut up a lot of people, and I'm first in that line, because when he was early on in the season last year, did some good things, and you saw a lot of flaws in there. By the end, like, okay, yeah, he's first round talent. Like, he's grown so much from what he's been before. Like, it surprised a lot of people, including within the building at Georgia. I think that they knew that he had ability and talent. They didn't see that coming.
No, again, my opinion when I said if you'd asked me however long ago it was, what about Carson Beck? I'm like, he's not that good. It's just, and that was coming from coaches. That wasn't coming from janitors. That was coming from people like, yeah, he just doesn't have it. Then, I think it was that spring, and we're like, man, you want to talk about the number one and most improved guy on our team? It's Carson Beck. But of course, you had an established starter, Stetson Bennett. And they're like, you also noticed that the coaches started letting Stetson run like crazy. You can let your quarterback run when you got a backup that can step in and do the job. And you're right. There was that hesitancy when he would get in, and kind of mop up duty. And then game 1 to game 15 looks like a totally different guy. Well, this is the year it's supposed to slow down for him after he just set the single season completion record. I think Carson Beck is going to be okay this year.
Jed, you're back with us, and you were in the room with Carson Beck at SEC Media Days. I also thought that he was much more calm and confident around media than I had seen before. Did you kind of see some of that growth as well?
Yeah, and it's funny to think, because I interviewed him at the media day for the national championship in LA, where it was going to be Stetson Bennett's last game. He's presumed to be the starter, and I don't want to say he was freaking out, but you could tell he's like, oh man, there's a lot of media around me, because he's just sitting at a chair. He wasn't at a podium or anything. So one, it was kind of an awkward setup anyway, but whatever. But yeah, you got to be, and he's out in front of the media every game. So since then, he's had, I'm sure he came up after G-Day, and he's had 15 games. He's had SEC Championship Media Day, all this spring. Now this Media Day, so yeah, he knows he's the leader now, and I think we talked about this with Stetson Bennett too. This is your team. There's no, last year we had the Beck Vandegrift debate, and we all kind of thought Carson Beck would win it, but you don't know. What were we talking about before I left, Radi? Assume nothing. So you don't know. One, he knows this is his team. Two, he has been in the fire. He has won at Auburn. He has won. What other games they won last year? Tennessee. He won at Tennessee. He beat Georgia Tech in a tough game on a Saturday night. So his teammates know this guy can do it. They've got full confidence in him, and that in turn has given Carson confidence to be like, hey, I will tell you when you mess up. I will tell this guy how I want a route run. I'll tell the lineman how I want this protection to go. So that I think is going to pay a lot of dividends this year, because there's not going to be any figuring out of what's Carson Beck going to do when he throws a pick. What's he going to do on his first road start? We know these things now. So he's going to be comfortable from day one. And I think he talked last year, I don't know if it was a South Carolina game or Auburn game, where he said, from then on, I felt more comfortable. He's going to be comfortable from day one.
Auburn, yeah.
And he's going to need it, because they obviously start with Clemson. But I think this offense is going to be able to hit the ground running this year compared to last year, where it was still kind of touch and go a little bit for the first month.
You're right, and he said last year, he kind of leaned on Cedric Van Pran to be that vocal leader, to call guys out and to set it up. And Cedric, of course, was coming off of his second national championship. A lot of those guys had just won 2 titles in a row, both with Stetson Bennett, and he'd been on the team, but he was the new guy, so he didn't feel comfortable being very vocal and kind of screaming at people or calling them to account. This year, he's like, yeah, okay, I earned my stripes last year being the quarterback. Now it is my squad, and all eyes are looking to him to be that leader, and he is has been fantastic. We had a question popped up on this one.
Well, as you find it, the personality differences between Stetson Bennett to Carson Beck, that's a credit to really the leaders on the team, but also the coaching staff to navigate that, because very different in how they run teams. They probably have different cliques within the locker room. And you saw Georgia find a way to keep winning games because of its talent through all of that. I think that's masterful coaching. And you even heard Kirby early on with Carson Beck of like, he's not the rah-rah guy. He's not the big leader guy. Get in your face, tell you what to do. And Stetson Bennett was more of that. I think Jake Fromm was a bit more of that. Kirby's had to grow through this as well.
Yeah, you're right. A question came in from Barking Bill, who's sent plenty of questions in before. He says, will Kirby let Carson Beck put up enough numbers to win the Heisman? That's a big assumption, but it's a good question. So
I don't think Kirby's going to care about the numbers, but I think the schedule will dictate that Georgia starters will play longer. I don't think there'll be fourth quarter blowouts quite as frequently this season.
And I think even to build off of that, you're going to have a lot of marquee opportunities, because Georgia Clemson is, off the top of my head, probably the game of week 1, I would imagine. Georgia Alabama obviously is a marquee game. Georgia Texas is a marquee game. Georgia Ole Miss is a marquee game. You'll play Georgia Tech on a Black Friday, which could be the game of Black Friday, off the top of my head. So, and then the SEC championship potentially if you get there. So, you think of what Joe Burrow did in 2019. They beat Texas in Austin. They beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, I think. They had a lot of marquee, and obviously Joe Burrow earned it through putting up stats and whatever. But when you have that many opportunities on the big stage against marquee teams and on the road to boot, that'll generate a lot of buzz for you for sure.
If it was an easier schedule, I would say no, because Kirby's going to pull him. I mean, yeah, even though it is his last year and he can let him go out and win a Heisman, that might help him. Kirby's not having any trouble recruiting quarterbacks. You got Ryan Montgomery coming in, who will be in Athens this weekend, who's really good. Puglisi, who's already on the team, is really good. Jared Curtis is a superstar going forward for the 2026 class. He doesn't need the additional headache that comes with that. I mean, the additional hype that comes with having a Heisman guy is great. But what he needs is Jaden Rashada to get more reps. He needs Ryan Puglisi to get more reps. He wants whoever's in that quarterback room to get more reps, because you're one play away. Kirby's thought is on the national title. So if it is a blowout and he's like, well, he's only got 218 yards passing, yeah, we're going to pull him. But you're also going to be facing much tougher defenses, so he plays deeper into the games. So if he does well, he can win it, and they won't need to make that decision.
There's also a chance that because Carson Beck just doesn't have a big flashy personality, he's very calm and composed and relaxed and doesn't get out. That probably doesn't help his case as much as a Burrow, which just kind of became a cult following at that point. I think that's one reason that Devontae Smith ended up with a Heisman when Mac Jones had great numbers. Mac Jones was worthy of a Heisman that year too. What made that year different that the wide receiver gets the credit for that more than the quarterback? I don't know. Could a Dylan Bell find a way to be in a Heisman talk? That's possible with an offense like this.
Yeah, and I mean, heck, Carson Beck went to New York, and it wasn't a plan on Georgia's part. It's just he was really good running an offense and put up great good numbers. I mean, excuse me, Stetson Bennett went. So I think there's a front page story from yesterday about Carson Beck talking about this. He said, look, if I win games, it'll take care of itself. And I think he's right. I don't think it needs to be a decision one way or the other. One decision that you need to make, though, my friends, if you're trying to decide what you want to do in your future, if you're trying to come up with you want some financial independence, you don't want to be answering to someone else. You want to be your own boss. Reach out to myperfectfranchise.net. Myperfectfranchise.net. It's right there in the name. There are over 3,000 different franchise opportunities. Andy Ludecky and the folks at My Perfect Franchise will walk you through all the different options based on the time you have available, your financial goals, what would make you happiest. It's tough to do it on your own. Why not reach out to Andy? Let him walk you through it. There is no cost to you. Andy, you don't pay him a dime. You might go into this and find out, no, it's just not for you because of the time constraints or the money constraints or the location constraints. You might find out, hey, this would be super easy for me to do. Andy's going to walk me through it. I'm going to get started, which he has done for numerous folks at UGASports.net. He's done it for a lot of our other rival sites as well. He's helped out a lot of folks in Texas. So if you want to do what a lot of your fellow readers and viewers have done, reach out to Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. I also want to mention our friends over at Academia Brewing Company, they have a neat thing going on this weekend, or excuse me, they're August 4th. There's going to be an event up there that you need to check out. They already did it once on one will be tomorrow, but one is also August 4th. The Paint and Sip. Okay. It's basically there's a painting class that goes on, and you get to drink and have all their food. It's like $30. It's on a Sunday from 2 to 4. You go out there because they have that kind of special meeting area with all the murals on the walls. So you go out there, you have a painting class, you have a bunch of beer, you have a bunch of food, you have cocktails, the full bar. It's $30 a person. Try the Paint and Sip at Academia. Definitely a neat concept. You need to try that out. There's always doing neat things at Academia, whether it be a new beer, a new menu item. There's always something. You should follow them on Facebook and Instagram. They had a huge 4th of July special out of Lake Oconee. They're definitely worth your time to follow on social media. And the Bear Biscuit Brunch on the front page there. So check them out when you get a chance.
All right, let's wrap the last few minutes we have with questions. Radi, I know that you had a lot come your way. People are excited for the season. That's one thing I do love about media days is it is the kickoff to here we go. Season's coming, fall camp's here. And I've kind of felt that just even around Athens of people getting excited for what's coming.
I like this one from GA class of 86, Georgia class of 86 says, who is going to win us the game versus Clemson a la Chris Smith? So who's going to put in the one big play that beats Clemson?
Jalen Walker.
Dylan Bell.
I'm going to say Carson Beck. It goes for 330 and 3 touchdowns.
And the answer may be that it's not that close. That it's not a one person having to win.
Well, who scores the go-ahead touchdown maybe, or who gets the go-ahead the sack that takes them out of field goal range or something.
Yeah.
So, like that one. We talked the one about Heisman numbers. Kurt DD says, what is the latest on Jordan Hall? He's obviously a reader at UGASports.com. We mentioned that Jordan Hall, the defensive lineman, has a leg issue, and it will be a close run thing if he is ready for that Clemson game. But full recovery is expected. This is the offseason. These guys have this little surgeries, and that's just what we do.
I did think that there are a couple of positions where, not that Georgia doesn't have talent there, but you're one injury away from feeling very thin from experienced talent. I think the interior of the defensive line is that way. Not a lot of experience beyond Stackhouse, I suppose, that you would feel good about going against an Alabama or a Texas. I think Jordan Hall they feel good about, but he hasn't played a whole lot in that role for Georgia, so still inexperienced. Tight end is another position to me where not a whole lot of proven experience.
Right there, because Delmonico asked what position group needs the most development. I think that would go right along with your question.
I think it's those, and then defensive back, corner. It's so hard to defend really good wide receivers and really good quarterbacks, and there were plenty of those in the SEC. So I want to see depth at corner for Georgia.
Jed, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say tight end. Just again, because even Urasek, I mean, he didn't get here until a few weeks ago, so I'm sure he's had the playbook since whenever, but. It's a lot of getting used to. You could throw running back in maybe just because what's Branson Robinson going to look like? What does Roderick Robinson look like in a bigger role? You got all the freshmen, obviously. So, and running back obviously is a position that you have a decent amount of not even injuries necessarily, but a lot of guys get banged up on a weekly basis. So what does that look like over the course of 12, 13, 14, 15, however many games?
For me, I won't say position group, but I'll say position. I'm fine with Georgia cornerback. I think you got 3 ridiculously good cornerbacks who are going to be fantastic. Nickel.
Yeah.
Who's that star? That's the one.
And we think that's Aguero, right? We think that's the most likely starter.
So, Delmonico also asked, here's a good question for you that I guess we can answer tonight, Jed. Will Justice Terry flip back to Georgia?
Believe so. We actually were talking about this earlier today. He could be visiting Georgia this weekend. It doesn't really sound like a final decision has been made on where he is going, if he's going anywhere. Obviously, Georgia's pretty close to Manchester. So whether he he visits Georgia or not, I believe he ends up at Georgia in the end, but a visit this weekend would just go that much farther to push the marathon toward the finish line, so to speak, to use the terminology Georgia uses with him.
And Roddy, you live near Manchester now. I covered Manchester when I was in TV. That's a Georgia community. Like everyone in his world that he's ever met that lives near Manchester would prefer that he go to Georgia.
Oh, he told me that.
Yeah. Does that make a difference in his decision? I don't know if it outright does, but it sure would make a lot of people happy.
Yeah, I think it might have early on, but when he flipped, he saw that he could live with the fact that I mean, if he's going to be a professional football player, he's not going to be just defined by where he played college football. So if he goes to, Auburn's nearby too. Let's say he goes somewhere else and then plays 13 years in the NFL. He's going to be a former NFL player. It'll be nice that he was a former Georgia player, but they'll still love him in Manchester if he played 13 years for the Eagles. So,
but I say specifically to Manchester, that felt like Georgia territory to me.
Oh, it is.
Whereas,
absolutely.
A similar community.
Like Jed's been there. It's Georgia top to bottom.
But like Sly County is in Georgia as well, probably the same distance away from the border. It felt like Auburn had a little bit more of a shot with those players in Sly County for whatever reason.
You're right, but no, it's diehard Georgia, no question. Fresno, California dog says, "Who is the young lady Carson Beck is dating, and why is that news?" All caps.
All right, let's go to our entertainment reporter, Jed May.
It's the
How much time have we got? Is this a different show? We're gonna do like a 3:30 like entertainment weekly show every week now.
I get it. It did make national headlines. But he doesn't know who she is.
What's the most extreme way to answer that?
I'll tell you who she is. So she's a Cavender twin. They were basketball players that in women's basketball, which has had a surge in popularity, they've used social media a ton to gain a following. And then they gain NIL opportunities playing at Miami is where they transferred to. And I think at least one of them is done playing basketball.
Yeah, one of them went to TCU and then I think now is back at Miami.
Okay.
I think.
But they're not going to be professional basketball players. They're maximizing their value potential now. They're going to be online influencers, which there's a massive market for that.
Dude, everyone's like, "Oh, she's only into him for his money." I'm like, she makes more money than he does.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know. I mean, maybe they're from around Jacksonville, maybe where Carson's from. I don't know. I have no idea. Like you said, Dayne, I know they play at Miami, but I don't know outside of that.
Jermaine King says they are celebs, so it's news. That's
there you go. That's the only explanation you need.
Jermaine gets it, that, and I can see the person saying, "Why is this? Why did this fill up his news feed all of a sudden?" He's like, and again, you didn't hear about who other quarterbacks were dating, so I can see why he's like, "Why am I getting that?" Whistling Whiskey says, "Will the stadium?" Well, I'm assuming you mean Sanford Stadium. Will the stadium have Wi-Fi this year? No.
As long as they have it in the press box, that'd be in the new press box. That'll be great.
Yeah, have fun in that new press box down there in the end zone.
Yeah, staring into
your glass.
Yeah.
I hate glass in press boxes. I want open air always.
I wonder because, and this is like problems that nobody cares about, but I think it was Vanderbilt last year because it was a noon game and you got sitting in the press box and the sun is just like beaming in through those windows. And I wonder if it'll be the same in Sanford because the sun kind of goes like over the scoreboard. Yeah. So I wonder what that situation will be like. It'd be weird if the north side consider the ultimate comfort of the media in every decision they make, but I don't know. We'll see.
I had one of the very nice wealthy donors take me to where they were building where they removed the media area and put in the seats, and they had a big event where you could go and pick your seats, and the prices were outstanding. And I sat in those seats, and I'm like, man, this is.
Roddy's thinking, how much could have I sold my credential for all these years?
Yeah. Exactly. But the seats, even though the media had a perfect spot on the field, with the way the counters were, it's kind of annoying. The way it's set up now, it feels like you're hovering like right over the 50, and the view is insane. And I can see why they're charging thousands upon thousands.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, best press box view I've ever had. Sure.
Yeah.
And Auburn's old one was kind of like that, and they changed it
Yeah.
5-6 years ago, whatever. But
In terms of just campus view, Jed, I think that new press box will have one of the prettiest views of anywhere on the campus.
yeah, I wondered about that because you're kind of like, I wonder how much it's angled versus, because from the old one, you can see out over the bridge and everything, and I wonder how much you can see from there. I wonder also if we're going to get to see it at some point during camp, maybe, or if we'll just see it when we go up there.
Hopefully that August 4th practice they have, and it's supposed to be open to.
Yeah. So again, these are all things that our listeners could care less about, but these are the things I occupy my time with. So we'll see. It whether I like it or not, it is what it is. So, and I can write from there as well. Not that I write well anyway, but can write from there as well as I do from my car. So we'll see.
Here's one right up your alley. It says, "Dog Days, can you help me win the Masters lottery?"
I won it 2 years ago.
I would love to. I would love to go. Radi, I went with you 22. The year Scotty won the first time. It was cold. Remember that day we went? It was cold. It was cold and windy. It was like 65. Didn't see the sun.
You just used that excuse to buy a bunch of gear.
How did Jed, as the new guy, get the Masters invite among all of us who've been on the team for a while? How did that happen?
Dude, he got the Vegas invite week 1 of the job.
I did.
No wonder he's stuck around as long as he has.
Yeah, never forget.
Nice bird.
Congrats. If anybody out there won the Masters lottery, congrats to you, and good luck with fielding all the requests from your friends and family for the next 8 months or however long it is till April.
I won it 2 years ago. My dad won it last year. I did not win it this year.
Well, like Kirby Smart talking about his assume nothing and, trying to condition his guys to take to buy into this year. It's a good problem to have when you've got a loaded team and you're only worried about that. So if you've won the Masters lottery, it is a good problem to have trying to figure out who you're going to take.
You know what I did though, Jed?
I took Jed. I didn't take anybody else.
I went and entered the Open lottery for next year. I'm like, let's try Northern Ireland.
I really want to do. Like, I want to go over there so bad because it's so historic. Even if it wasn't at St. Andrews, like any of those courses over there would just be like Carnoustie would be cool. Troon would be cool. I want to go to Prestwick because that's where old Tom Morris was. Not that they play the Open there anymore, but that's next on the. Like, I'd rather go to an Open than a U.S. Open at like Pebble Beach. Like, that's
I agree with that.
It's harder to get there, but that's kind of next on my bucket list to cross off.
Sacred Grove has a question. Will you guys have tape from the public NIL practice? On August 4th, Georgia's opening up practice to members of their NIL collective, the Classic City Collective. If you are a donating member there, then you will get to go to this special practice. We don't know if the media will be allowed into that practice. If they're not, then maybe we have to join the collective to get access to it. But the idea of having tape from it, I think that they will prohibit us from actually recording any sorts of practice because that would defeat the purpose of limiting it just to the NIL members. So Sacred Grove, I don't think they're going to let us do that. That is my assumption. Maybe they will, but I'm not going to count on it.
Having worked at UGASports as long as I have, whatever the practice circumstances are, we'll have some info in the dog vent for our folks.
Yeah, we broke some. Congrats to Nealon Raper. We broke that news. Georgia's director of football operations is heading off to be part of the Big 12 office. We broke that news yesterday morning. Raper has been a phenomenal addition to UGA. He's been with them for some time. He's moved up through the ranks, was Kirby's right-hand man. I've seen Kirby yell at him or heard Kirby yelling at him a lot. It is tough to work for Kirby Smart. But Kirby's coaching tree and his support staff tree are phenomenal. And that means that Nealon is getting a huge opportunity to work for the Big 12 committee. This is a guy who will probably be the commissioner of the SEC before it's too long. So congrats to him. We will miss him around here because every time I've seen him, he's always just had a huge smile on his face. Never helped us win any news, Kirk, but he has been a huge help to Georgia and an integral part of their championship run. So congrats to Nealon. We do have a few more questions, but we will save those for Coach because they are best answered by him. We should have him back on next Tuesday at noon. So be sure to tune in then. Also, hopefully tonight, should tonight at 8:30, if my voice holds out, have a long-awaited edition of Rumors versus Facts with Jed May, Trent Smallwood, and Lance McCurley. A ton of commits have come in. Big recruiting weekend coming up this weekend. And I'm going to ask these guys who's going to be the next person to commit. So we'll put them on the spot tonight at 8:30. So join us then on this YouTube channel and this Facebook page. We'll see you later.